Welcome back, guys. Well, today I'm here in my home garden and I wanted to show you my wild edibles garden. This garden has about 35 to 40 different wild edibles, and now more than ever we've been made aware of in these strange times of where our food's coming from and what to do when the food supply chain has issues. So why not work now to build a home garden for yourself that'll be your grocery store. So let's take a peek at several of the wild edible plants and shrubs that I have here on the property. And this garden, keep in mind, is very young. I've been working on this now for the last couple of years, so it's still in the maturing phase, but give it 10-15 years and it's going to look really, really amazing. But you know what, this year there will still be some production, so let's take a look. So we'll start off with my English garden at the side of the house here. Not too many wild edibles in here, but let's zoom in. There are a couple that you can spy. Here's the daylily. Shoots, petals, and tubers can be eaten, dried or fresh. In and amongst my bush right here, you can see there is some milkweed. So you've seen me make milkweed salad, and it has a lot of latex. If you were to break off one of these leaves, like I'm just going to do right here, you can see that there's a very milky sap to it. So this is the common milkweed. You want to prepare this properly, as it can be toxic if not prepared properly. But you can pan fry the flower heads and use the tender pods for a salad, but they must be prepared properly. Right here is one of my 4 lilacs at the house here. They're gorgeous, they smell lovely. They range in color from a light pink to a white to purple. You can use the flowers in a salad. You can make a nice syrup out of them. I also infuse honey with the lilac flowers, so that's really a tasty treat come spring. To the front of my house now, I've got a lot of plants right here. This one right here that doesn't look too happy, this is actually my fig. This is a commercial fig that I bought a long time ago, and I brought up outside. It's been inside all winter. Unfortunately, the leaves are a little bit sun scalded, and he also has a bit of a virus, so the leaves don't look too happy right now, but they'll green up. In the fall, I usually get a few figs from it, so they don't do well in this climate, so he has to be inside for the winter time. Behind my heron right here, there is a secret wild edible. We'll just take a look. And behind the plants right here, you can see, what's that? That's a prickly pear cactus. So those aren't terribly common, but you can see them in Ontario. They are a native species of cactus and they are edible. Some people take the spines off and I believe grill the leaves and eat the leaves. Also, it can produce a fruit that is edible as well. So I've got one here and I've got another one I need to plant. So again, back looking down in front of my shade plants there, I've got some more violets. Violets are edible, the flowers and the leaves, and you'll see there's lots more of them here at the property. Down here I have some sage. I bought some seeds and I planted them in the bucket here. The squirrels have really had at them, so it's going to take a long time for those guys to come back. On the front lawn here I have, this is a Hackberry or a fly honeysuckle. I have 3 of them. 2 of them are seen here. They just got put in last year, so they're pretty young shrubs. They grow a fair size, and as you'll see here in June, they grow a beautiful purple berry. So if you want something that's kind of like a blueberry but a little bit tart like a raspberry, you can have this Hackberry. They're also called honeyberry for those of you guys that are wondering, and you can buy those at a commercial garden center. Here's one of my favorite plants. This is Miraca Gale or Sweet Gale. I have about 11 of these here at the house. This is the biggest one. They love moist environments. You got to make sure to water them really well. You can use the leaves as a tea or a bouquet garni in your cooking. Now, who doesn't love roses? Here are some wild Canadian roses, and I've got just one bush here in the garden. Oh, Royce, get out of there. He's always wanting to eat some of my flowers. But the rose hips that form on here in the fall are lovely for teas, and of course it attracts lots of pollinators in here, so it's really nice to see the bees doing really well. Here's a bumblebee getting some pollen off of the rose to make some delicious honey. Another wild edible flower for people are pansies. For pets, it makes them a little bit sick to their stomach, but the pansies here, they have a nice peppery taste, and you can put them in salads. So you can just take the petals off of the flower here and pop them in a salad. Very tasty, very bright, cheery flower for the spring. They're some of the first things that I put in as soon as the frost is over. The front of the house, I put in 3 Forsythia. So this one went in last year. It's growing really well. The 2 beside it have gone in this year, and they have a beautiful yellow flower before all the leaves come out. Now the flowers are actually a wild edible too, which I did not know about until I looked it up this year. So I'll have a beautiful hedge of Forsythia in the coming years. These are quite small, but they will build up and they can be many, many feet tall. The front of my house, I have a beautiful crabapple. This is a mature tree. It produces, hundreds upon thousands of crab apples every year. So I'll be making some jelly this fall. Another, plant I have at the house, a tree actually, is a cedar. So I've got about 3 cedars here at the house, and cedars are so fragrant and lovely. And I can use the leaves of the cedar to make, infuse some hot water for a nice tea. Or I don't know, maybe you could use some cedar, make a little pouch to prevent, insects from getting into your clothes. Don't forget the wild edibles in your grass. Here are some dandelions. So the nice tender leaves can be used for salads. The roots you can roast and make coffee, and the flowers for, baking or wine. And just beside them, look at this, wild strawberries. So my lawn is actually infused with lots of wild strawberries. They spread by runners, so they tend to grow pretty rapidly. And I don't see any berries right here, but there were a lot of little flowers, so maybe the chipmunks had at them before I've had a chance to harvest them. But I'll keep my eyes peeled. There'll probably be more coming soon. So if you take a peek at the side of my house here, I've got a few more wild edibles. So there's also some plants here like petunias that aren't wild edibles for me, but take a look at this. I don't know if you guys know what this is. This is actually a hops vine. So this is, when you look at hops for beer, this is how it grows. So I've got a little trellis behind it, and I'll show you in a second. It's actually growing on a form underneath, and the hops will be ready to harvest later on in the season. So I'm just gonna let this grow, but it died right back over the winter, and this is just the growth from this spring. So I find it pretty incredible how rapidly it's growing. I might have to move this trellis a bit more. And there's the form you see underneath. Look at all those vines. There's just so many of them in there. It's doing really, really well. I can't wait to try it out for making some of my my wild brews in the future. There's the other fly honeysuckle, or Hackberry, or honeyberry as they call it. So again, they need cross-pollination, so that's why I have 3 of them on the property. This one looked pretty dead at the end of last year. It was kind of the end of season plant, so hopefully next year we'll get some berries. Along the side of the house here, I've got some more wild edibles. So here is actually a maple that's coming up, so that's going to take many years before I'll be able to tap that. When I made that violet jelly, that's where the violets came from. Just tons of them all over the house. And I've got 2 shrubs here, another lilac, and behind it right there that you're staring at right now, that one is a Staghorn Sumac, and that produces a beautiful red striking flower head, and that I use to make sort of like a lemonade. I just infuse some water with it, and it's very, very tangy and tasty. Back here, speaking of wild brews, I've started a grape. So this one went in last year, and it's doing really well. You can see the big leaves here. The leaves are edible too, when cooked, and you can wrap them like that, and you can stuff them with meat and rice or whatnot and bake them. And don't forget, the grapes are used for wine. So here's a little sneak peek into my backyard. I've got the fence up for Royce. There's a little goat fence to keep him contained, but let's take a look. So you enter my backyard through the side lot here. This is bee turf that's been put in, so lots of beautiful grasses and flowers and clovers I'll show you in a minute. And that's some Canadian limestone there on the ground, little pathway. So if we take a closer look, you can see there's lots of clover in here, some fine grasses, and there's some borage. So borage produces a beautiful white and purple flower, beautiful for the pollinators. And in here there's some yarrow. Yarrow is a medicinal. When I dry it and make it into a powder, it's a styptic powder. You can also add it to your wild brews as a bittering agent. Very, very fragrant. When I crush this leaf, it has a beautiful, beautiful smell. Here's some 9-bark. This one just went in this year, another one for the pollinators. Also, it has medicinal uses as well. Look at this gorgeous flower right here. It's sort of a pinky whitey color. This is a pretty large shrub, so that's why I've given it lots of space where I've planted it. It'll get quite large, and I'm going to have to prune this back over the years. I think it's going to get pretty big. And you'll see in a moment I've got another a beautiful plant beside it that's also a wild medicinal, but just a nice flower, and some little flies I see kind of pollinating it when I'm out in the yard, so it attracts all different kinds of insects. Behind the 9-bark, you can see here, got it well protected, are a couple of patty pan squash plants, so those are going to produce some squash for me. And just against that little chicken wire fence there, just pardon the mess, I put in a few bean seeds amongst the bee turf. Those will come up soon, some heirloom beans, and I'm going to string them up along the side of the deck here, and because they need to grow up. They're heirloom bush beans. And as we look over here, let's walk over here and take a look at some other plants that I have. This one is the elderberry. And the elderberry is a wild medicinal. You know, I use it actually this spring. I may have had COVID and didn't realize it, but I had an elixir that was made up basically at the drugstore of elderberry extract. Took it 4 times a day, and let me tell you, I was doing very well after 3 to 4 days. But now I guess we know we're not supposed to do that. But anyway, I'm looking forward to making my own, you know, syrups and things with it. But you really have to cook the elderberry fruit. You cannot eat it raw. It will make you really sick to your stomach. Right here is one of 2 chokeberry shrubs. So you guys remember last year I made chokeberry muffins. They tend to be found in some boggy, acidic type soils. That's where I found them actually, and they have a beautiful little blackberry. You want to harvest them when they're very black and mature, late in the summer. I'd say August, kind of when the blueberries are ready. The chokeberries will be ready, and they kind of look like a little apple at the bottom of the fruit. The German name is Apfelbeeren, and that's how I remember how they look like. They're black with that little kind of pinched bottom that looks like an apple. So I've got 2 of those this year, so I'll be able to harvest them on my own property, which is pretty exciting for me. This might be one of my favorite berries. This is a Saskatoon. This is quite a mature shrub actually. So this is Saskatoon. You guys may be familiar with the Saskatoon berries if you're from out west or up north. Very prolific plant. Like, look at all those berries starting to ripen on there. I think I'm gonna have to put some bird netting on there so the birds don't have at them. But I'm excited to be able to make a Saskatoon berry pie this fall. I think it's gonna be extremely tasty. So I've got one of these, and it seems to be doing the job. Now here is an invasive. This is a plant that I have to keep in a container. It's Japanese knotweed. You don't want this to naturalize. It's very, very bad, but you can use it in your baking. Here's my bird bath. My birds love this. Every day we have grackles and robins and other birds drinking from it and bathing in it. So here's this robin. It comes every single day, a male robin there to bathe, and I just love having extra habitat for these birds. Now here's a little patch, we've got some Solomon seal, and we also have some fresh mint. So the mint gets really, really prolific. You put in a little bit, it starts to spread everywhere. So I love mint. You know, you can make mint tea. Here, of course, my ostrich ferns. You guys are familiar with fiddleheads? Well, these are fiddleheads. So I've got my own little fiddlehead collection in the backyard. Right here, this is a wild gooseberry. It's really, really small, so this is gonna take a long time to come up, but that means I'll have another type of berry to eat in the future. Next, we have catnip. So take a look at that. The cats love this. It's fresh catnip. I also make a tea from it where I can basically, I just scoop it up out of the ground at the end of the season, just chop it off, and I dry it, and I can make a nice tea from it, or use it to make catnip pillows. Over here, as you can see, lots more wild violets. They just seem to be everywhere. Look at the size of that leaf. And there's the puppers. He's enjoying his life here at the house. He likes zapping around the yard, and it's like a maze going through all the plants, so he's having a great old time. Here are some Trillium. So Trillium are edible, the leaves are edible, but these ones, of course, are Ontario's flower, so I'm going to leave them be. I won't be touching these ones. But they're very beautiful in the spring, you know, reds and pinks and whites, and they come up. As you can see here, the flower head is dead, so they'll just kind of be lush for the rest of the season. I've got a couple of areas of them. There's another milkweed, and it's a little bit of a mess in there, but I do have some wild leek in there. They're going to die back for the year, and they'll probably come up next year. I planted them as seeds, and I had to do something special with them to get them to grow. Here we have a Jack in the Pulpit. This isn't edible, but I wanted to show you what a cool flower that is. It's a natural, native Ontario species, and it's just beautiful. Again, more daylilies and violets, and there's another Miracle Gale in there, the sweet gale. I've got several of them on the property here. And here's some burdock. Burdock with those big leaves that you see there, they almost look like rhubarb. Got 2 mature plants right there. You can use them, like the roots especially, and some people actually use the stems and stuff like that as well for more tender specimens in certain recipes. So I've got lots of those, and of course the seeds for the birds. Here's some sweet fern. Sweet fern is great as a tea. Also, if you burn it, it's good to get rid of insects, and a very lovely smelling plant. In there, you can't see much right now, it's died back, but basically there's a lot of trout lilies in here. There's literally no leaves left, there's just the corms underground. So that's why the forest, you don't see them anymore after June, they just disappear. But there's lots of them in there before. I use those, the corms you can eat, and the leaves I'll use for salad in moderation. Again, if you eat too much of the lilies, you can get a bit of a stomach upset. Unfortunately, you can't see them right now, but in my previous videos, you can see what trout lilies look like in the forest. I've got the bricks here so I don't hit them with the lawnmower. Here's wintergreen. So wintergreen, a lovely little trail snack, has a red berry that you can harvest in the winter and early spring. The leaves, when you crunch on them, they taste like wintergreen. So right now I make a kombucha with wintergreen flavoring, and it's a really strong flavorant if you want to make a nice wild soda. So I've got a big plant here, and the lighter colored growth is the new growth from this year. Here you can see red currant. It's very young, so we probably won't get many berries on it this year. But I've got a red currant here, and later on I'll show you I have a black currant as well. That one died back a bit last year, but it's come back. There's the black currant. I think there's one little berry on it right now, very small, but these types of currants, they grow really fast, and I'll have lots of jams and jellies to make with these, and pies, I'm assuming. So I'm gonna have a lot of work with this garden, because there's lots of stuff in here that's going on. And I have wild strawberry out front, and I have just a regular, variety of strawberries from my local gardening store. So you can see lots of strawberries on there. They aren't quite ripe yet. It's been a little bit cool this spring, so I think maybe another couple of weeks they'll be ready to roll. But this one, very, very lush plant. Behind it, of course, what goes with strawberries but rhubarb. So almost looks like burdock, but it's not. It's got nice red stalks. So that's my rhubarb for rhubarb pie. So you can see here we've got a couple of pumpkin plants, and I've also got some zucchini in there as well. So they'll grow quite large and sort of trail out into the rest of the garden, which is fine by me. There's one on either side. Sitting in the middle of them is actually a tayberry, which is another kind of fruit, and beside it there is a raspberry. So I've got some raspberries starting on there. They won't be ready for another month. So I've got lots of berries. It gets huge, it's going to spread everywhere. This garden is a bit of a mess. This is just my regular veggie garden. That's a blackberry right there. There's a few cabbage in there and some leek. And the back corner, that is wild ginger. So I have to deal with the back of the garden. It's quite a mess, but there's a close-up on the ginger there for you. And there's some green onion as well. So, and a pepper. And at the back, well, it's a bit of a mess. Let's just take a look though. There's one plant at the back in amongst all that weed that I want you to take a look at, and that is my kale. So this was from last year. It actually held up over winter, which is really weird, and it came back. And I don't know what that is, if that's a tomato coming up, but that's an asparagus. So I got lots of little asparagus, and there's some cilantro there. This stuff, quite a mess. I have to go through everything and see what's going on. I think that's all weeds. And I'm going to put some mulch on top as well. Got a couple of beans put in there where I just pointed to those little trellises there. So we'll see those bush beans come up, and yeah, a lot of work to do that. Blackberry has come a long way, and we're going to be getting lots of harvest from there. There's tons of them last year on that one little bush. In front of my garden, here's mint. This is from my hydroponic growth earlier in the year over the winter. So I potted it, and the mint is doing really, really well. And behind there is actually a basil. So that's the basil from the hydroponic setup. So they're doing really well. And there's just some purple basil seeds that I put in. Again, the squirrels had at that one, so they're kind of in a weird distribution there, but they'll come up and be fine. I love feeding the birds, as you guys know. I've got several setups here. So I've got this hummingbird feeder. I've got two actually, one in the back, one in the front. I haven't had hummingbirds yet, maybe one that I saw, so I'm going to keep changing out my fluid and sort of see if they come. But they love, there's lots of habitat in my backyard, as you can see, so there's lots of place for cover, bird bath. I want to put up a couple bird houses. I have a lot of feeding stations, so I'm hoping to attract in wildlife. A little toad house down there. And at the back you can see another bird bath, and there's my pole system with another, there's a little jar of water up there. The chickadees absolutely love that. They had a chickadee family that was drinking every night, and there's some, some black wild sunflower seeds. Here's my neighbor's Mcintosh apple tree. The birds love hiding in there. It's great cover for them, and they love swooping in to go get the seeds and a drink. And I get apples in the fall, so that's perfect. There's my front feeder. It's my black wild sunflower seeds from Bob at Gilligaloo Bird. He also set me up this year with an oriole feeder, and I had an oriole this year come to the house, so that's really, really encouraging. I'm super pumped about that. Got lots of places for birds to nest, and just at the back of my garage there we have a phoebe. I think that's a phoebe nest. The phoebe has been really swooping around and hanging out, and they love making nests under overhangs, so we'll see if there's any birds this year. On the side of my property here is a hackberry tree. This is a southern Ontario tree, and produces a beautiful fruit, and you can eat it. Usually would harvest it later in the season. Some people even early winter, they'll put a tarp underneath and bang the branches of the tree and let the little berries fall off. So this is a hackberry tree, another surprise wild edible that I discovered on our property. And this is my blueberry. You can see lots of berries growing on there. This is my blueberry. This is a kind of a commercial blueberry. It's not an indigenous species of blueberry, I don't think. It's got lots of berries on there. There's two plants actually here, so very excited to have some blueberries as well. And last but not least, here is my spruce. So this spruce tree produces some spruce gum, so I can use that medicinally to make my salves. And if you look here, there's some fresh spruce tips. So I use the spruce tips early in the season to make all kinds of things. It's a really nice flavor. You can add them to salads, brews, make spruce tip sugar, spruce tip salt, whatever you want to do. So this tree is full of them, so it's a beautiful tree. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. I hope you enjoyed taking a tour of my garden. And if you have any comments or questions, don't forget to leave them down below in the comments section. I hope you guys have a wonderful week as always. Take care.